Good afternoon, UMLAUF Sculpture Garden and Museum family and friends. It's Frances once again on Thursday. Today is Storytime Day, and thank you so much for joining me again this week. I have been traveling a bit, taking care of some family obligations, some fun ones, moving in my son into his first place, and I found myself not having my book. So I went to my favorite bookstore, one of my favorite bookstores in Nashville, Tennessee, Parnassus Books, owned by writer Ann Patchett, co-owned, and I happened to find a book by an Austin author, that is near and dear to the UMLAUF actually, and I didn't know she had a new book out. Her name is Liz Garton Scanlon, and she lives not far from the UMLAUF here in town, well actually in Austin, I'm not yet there, back, and she has been a Family Day featured guest last fall at one of our family days, which are held the second Sunday of every month. Not right now, but we hope sooner than later on this fall. And I also read one of her other books on a previous story time. This book today is Thank You, Garden, and of course I chose it at first glance because of the word garden in the title. I'm always searching for books that make connections with our UMLAUF, and also because it was by Liz. And it's illustrated by Simone Shin. Thank you to Beach Lane Books, an imprint of Simon & Schuster, for letting us read this book. So thank you, garden. It's also really seasonally perfect for Austin right now because you might have a garden in your backyard, you might have a community garden in your neighborhood, you might go to a farmer's market on a Saturday or during the week and pick up fruits and vegetables from other gardeners, farmers. You might get a CSA delivered to you or go pick that up. So it's a perfect time in Austin to be growing, to be outside, to be growing fruits and vegetables, to be growing herbs and sunflowers. And in this time when we are needing to get some energy out, to be outside if we can stand the heat, it's a great way to be together outside. Just again, stay hydrated. Let's read Thank You, Garden. For soil and sun, for friends and fun. Thank you, garden. It's a really pretty book. I can't tell you how excited I was to see that it was Liz's book. Thank you, garden. Garden ready, garden new. This garden is a community garden up against a wall outside someone's building. It looks like there are 4 raised beds. Could be a family, multi-generational family, it could be neighbors, it could just be a school group or a different kind of community group. Garden so much work to do. People say gardening is a hobby. It's a hobby that involves some work, but it could be a really great way to get to know other people and of course get to know our world. Garden rock and garden water. See this woman? She's tending. You have to get the rocks out of the garden soil and make sure there's good drainage. So actually the rocks sometimes help. Garden son and garden daughter. And there are 2 young people taking part in the gardening. Garden dig and garden play. And yes, you can have fun while you're gardening. Garden filling up the day. Garden bed and garden plot. Garden proper, garden not. There are certain rules, of course, that some people follow with their gardening. Lots of rows and tending, but then there's down here some kids kind of goofing around. There can be recess when you garden. Garden hardly makes a sound. growing slowly underground. Sometimes rainy, sometimes dry. This past week in Austin, it has certainly been dry and hot, but you can see the dad here, the man here, has got his hose, and he's watering not only the garden, but probably the kids too. Garden soaking up the sky. Here are our two young people, and they're now on top of the building. Looks like there's a container garden built on top of a building on the roof, and look at that gorgeous sunset. Looks like an Austin sunset. Soaking up the sky, soaking up the sun. Apparently our weather is so warm that things just grow at night. Our grass is growing so tall and things just keep growing because the weather is so perfect. Garden path meets garden gate. And then there's garden wait. There's a lot of waiting in gardening. And wait through another season maybe. And wait. And this season looks so unfamiliar to me because it involves some rain and some other precipitation called snow. But gardening does take a while, and there are certain things that you get from gardens different times of year. But overall, you're going to have some patience in addition to effort. Garden frog and worm and bees. And there's always something else to find in the garden. Frogs are awesome in the garden. We have a lot of frogs at the UMLAUF Sculpture Garden. And worms are essential for the soil. And bees, as we've talked about before in a previous story time, bees are great pollinators, and we need the bees to keep our gardens going. Garden berries, beets and peas. 3 things that these people got from their garden. And looks like they might be headed off to market. Garden growing like a child, rosy, leggy, fresh and wild. I like that analogy. Gardens are like children. They need love and care and attention, patience, and they need some fun as well. I love this picture. Just shows all the activity. Rosy, leggy, fresh and wild. Wild in this muddy mess garden. Thank you. Here they are, all twisted up in the tomato vines. Those are those cages. Do you see what they had to put around the tomatoes? Tomatoes need those so they can grow up and tall with all of their bounty. Garden, thank you. Garden, yes. And there is the last page or 2 showing a table full of all those people who were in the garden beds at the beginning, sharing the fruits of and the vegetables of their efforts, their planning, their efforts, their fun. Garden, yes. Thank you, Liz Garton Scanlon. And kind of funny, in her back page bio, she says she answers to the nickname Liz Garden Salad, which I think is kind of fun. So I thank you for your inspiration, Liz, for sharing this wonderful book. And I appreciate you all at the UMLAUF tuning in to our virtual programming. I'm sorry we cannot have you at the garden right now, but be assured that the garden is growing. The sculptures are tended to very carefully, and stay tuned for more story time. But in the meantime, go to our UMLAUF Sculpture Garden and Museum website. We've updated it, and there are new things to see. And until we see you in person, we'll see you again next Thursday for story time. Cheers. We appreciate all of your support.